it's okay if the babies cry. That's one that I laid hands on. So he gets some special privilege when I speak. Now, Mr. Budge, I could see, made his little introduction as usual and attacked the honorable, profession of the attorneys. But as my sermon dictates, and Jesus had as my example, said he answered nothing. So I'll not retort. I'll not retort. So I want to say hello to everybody that is here, all our friends and guests that are gathered here, and especially a friend of mine, Ani Akal, that's over there. Greetings, Ani. And the other guests as well. And also, of course, to those who cannot make it here and are out on Zoom. And I do appreciate that beautiful song. It was, very stirring, kind of song with a melody or some kind of a depth to it that I really like. Okay, so today, to bring everybody up to date, is part 2 of my sermon, Your Journey with Jesus to Golgatha. Now, I want to understand, though, so there's no confusion, that this is not a belated Passover sermon. See, the events of the crucifixion are at the heart and core of God's great plan of salvation. So it's material for a sermon anytime during the year. Anytime. So let us go ahead now and pick up where we left off. Remember, Jesus had attended the Passover. After the Passover, they went to the Garden of Gethsemane. At Gethsemane, he was betrayed and taken prisoner. Then he was carted off, carried off, with the mob to the father-in-law of Caiaphas. And then after that hearing, if we put it in quotes, hearing, he was then taken before Caiaphas and the Sanhedrin. So you understand now, we've got quite a group he's standing in front of now. Okay, quite a group. Then what happens? We'll pick it up from there. Then Caiaphas, after this hearing, again in quotes, a hearing, because they tried to have false witnesses, and the false witnesses couldn't even agree. They couldn't even woodshed their witnesses, so that they agreed upon their lies. That didn't even fly. So finally he had to ask Jesus, if you remember, finally the ultimate question, do you claim to be the Son of God? And at that point, Jesus admitted, yes, I am the Son of God. And that, of course, was the first nail in the coffin, as we say. But he didn't reject that. He said it. Okay? So at this point, then, Caiaphas asked those that were with him there to the Sanhedrin, and he says, what's your decision? What's your decision now on this hearing we just had to the Sanhedrin? And in Matthew 26:66, they answered and they said, he is deserving of death. That was their verdict. That was their verdict. He was going to die. It's like you read, when you see the pictures or the videos of court trials, and I mean live, and they come back with a verdict and they say he's being condemned to death. That's the penalty. So a side point now in Matthew 26:64. At that point, Jesus stated a prophecy to Caiaphas. And you see, I'm trying to make this alive in real time, okay? He said, I say to you, just imagine now, here's Jesus looking him right smack in the eyeballs, and he's saying, you just found me guilty to die, but I say to you, say, what? I say to you that in the future you shall see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of power. Now that's an expression or a designation of God the Father, okay? And coming in the clouds of heaven. That's what Jesus expressly said to Caiaphas. So they will see Jesus coming with power in the clouds. What does that mean? What does it mean? Have you thought about that or just passed it over? See, you got to stop and think as you read the Bible. Does this all fit? All the pieces fit. The Bible is one big picture puzzle, but the pieces fit if you put them together rightly. Does this mean that Caiaphas will be in the first resurrection? Is that what it means? And he'll see Jesus coming at his second coming? Is that what it means? See, to me, the answer is no. But I only suggest that, okay? See, there is no evidence that Caiaphas was ever converted during his lifetime to be in the first resurrection and see Jesus come. So, see, it doesn't fit that would be the resurrection he's talking about. And on the other hand, I'm not saying Caiaphas is condemned to hell. Why? That's Jesus' job. He's given all authority, all jurisdiction to make those decisions, you see. So further, at the second coming, right? Well, why can't it mean Jesus coming at the second coming? That statement. Why? Because at the second coming, Jesus is not sitting at the right hand of God. You see, he's riding on a big white war horse. Okay, that's what he's doing. And at his second coming, Jesus, they say, is not sitting next to the Father. He's riding at the head of a myriad of angels. So you see, the second coming of Jesus doesn't seem to fit there in what Jesus said. Okay? So at what point of time is Jesus referring to? Now, after reviewing this subject, I suggest this, that Jesus was referring, now get this, to Jesus' third coming. Whoa, third coming, whoa. The Truth Squad's going to grab onto that one, right? Okay. When is that? When is that? That's when Jesus returns after the second resurrection. After the second resurrection, when he will return at the right hand of God the Father in the New Jerusalem. That's what seems to fit there. Ephesians 1:20, Hebrews 8:1. I have a lot of other scriptures, but we don't want to take time giving them all. You can find those. Okay. Then in Revelation 1:7, it says, "Behold, Jesus is coming with clouds," that's what he said, "and every eye will see him, even those who have pierced him." So that's what I suggest that could mean rather than Caiaphas being in the first resurrection. So back to the hearing. Matthew 27:2. After binding Jesus, see, pick up on these words. Here Jesus, he would be bound. He'd be carried to one place. He'd have a hearing. And during those hearings, he'd be ridiculed and condemned and mocked and everything else going on. And then he'd be released to hear that, but then he'd be tied back up again to go to the next hearing. So that after binding Jesus, they delivered him to Pontius Pilate. So now, remember, we're witnesses now. We're on this journey with Jesus. So now we go along with him. Now we follow along as they go across the courtyard, whatever it is, over to Pontius Pilate. And now we witness Jesus. We see him. There he is walking up. There's Pontius Pilate, right? Sitting on his chair of judgment. He's the one man that has the power and the authority to crucify or release Jesus. So this is a very crucial hearing. If you're an attorney watching this, you say, this is it. This is where the rubber meets the road. So in Matthew 27:12 and 14, Well, before Pilate, the chief priests and the elders shouted accusations, shouted. And say, you're conducting a hearing, and here's a group shouting, hey, you're shouting out, right? What are they shouting out? Demanding his death. Crucify him, crucify him. And you're conducting a hearing here. It's supposed to be an impartial hearing to weigh the facts. What's going on? What's the truth here? What's the accusation? What are the facts? Let's come to a just decision, see? It's interesting, when I was in law school, there was a case in the case books in which there was some black man being tried, I don't know what for at this point, down in one of the southern states. And outside the courtroom, there was a mob shouting, find him guilty, find him guilty. The Supreme Court reversed that when they found him guilty. They said, you can't have a fair trial when you got a mob outside shouting like that. You cannot have a fair trial. So it's interesting, here they right in front of Pilate, see? But still, it goes on. They could still shout their demands to crucify him. Verse 14, that's Matthew 27. But Jesus answered him not one word, so that the governor, Pontius Pilate, marveled greatly. He marveled greatly. What in the world? Jesus didn't answer. He's not raising things. He's not saying, that's not true, that's not true. I'm innocent. He's not doing that. It says he marveled. It was amazed, it says, the word. Astonished. He couldn't believe it. He couldn't believe it. See? So a side point. See, in Pilate's experience, when any person was brought before him in a life or death matter, that prisoner, he didn't remain silent. He just kept denying, those accusations are not true. They're not true, right? Simply not true. He would restate his version. No, here's what really happened, Pontius Pilate. Here's what really happened. You see, I'm innocent. That's what would happen. But Jesus stood silent in front of some of these accusations, okay? And now we know from other scriptures that Jesus did say something. He did talk. So it can't be we got a conflict of scriptures here. One says he remained silent, and the other one he spoke. No. See, what it means here is that Jesus did not invoke a defense. First of all, he did not speak to the accusations that were being made by the mob. He didn't do that. That's number one. Number two is it means he did not invoke a defense. He didn't put up a defense. Didn't say I'm not guilty and here's why I'm not guilty. He didn't do that, you see? So we, of course, understand why Jesus did not invoke a defense. We understand that. It's very, very heart-rendering when you think of it. So you got to go back to the Garden of Gethsemane. Remember the prayer? Father, deliver me. Don't let this happen. But if it has to, let it go. You see, this was a very hard thing. So we understand why Jesus did not deny the accusations or impose a defense. He could not. He could not do so. He couldn't save his life. He couldn't interpose a defense and win the case. He had to lose it. See? If he was going to fulfill the Father's mission, that the mission the Father gave him, and complete to follow God's will, he couldn't say anything. He couldn't say, release me. He couldn't put up a defense. He couldn't say, they're lying. He had to remain silent on those points. So, you see, his life was scripted out. It was written out. He couldn't go any other way. He had to die. That was it. That was God's plan of salvation. What was required? What was required? You see, Jesus could not invoke a defense. That's why he remained silent. So back to the hearing. Luke 23, 5 and 7. Luke 23, 5 through 7. But the crowd was more fierce They shouted louder, and more, and the more the crowd shouted, see, saying, "He stirs up the people, teaching throughout Judea." Teaching what? Beginning, no, not what so much, but where? From Galilee. See, Jesus was a Galilean, right? From Galilee to this place. Oh, that was interesting. You see, legally speaking, when you have a case, you got to find the venue. Where do you file it? Like Trump's case, you see, and this is not politics. This is examples. See, big argument. Wait a minute. Where's venue in that case now that he got indicted on? Is it in Washington, D.C., or is it down in Florida? Where's the venue? As an attorney, if you're going to file a case, you want to know where's the best venue? Where's the best judges for this type of case, et cetera, et cetera? You say, well, that's not really justice. We're not talking justice when we talk man's law. We're talking winning, right? Okay. So they said, beginning from Galilee, and that was the magic word for Pilate. Galilee, whoa, that struck a chord. That struck a chord. Did some of these activities take place in Herod's jurisdiction? Wonderful, beautiful. See, he's got some jurisdiction over this case then. Oh, that was good. This is my opportunity to get rid of this hot potato, this tar baby, see? All these people shouting out, kill him, kill him, kill him. And, you know, my reputation as a representative of Rome is in jeopardy, you see. So if I can get rid of it, this is a beautiful situation. Luke 23:6. When Pilate heard of Galilee, when that struck him, he had, whoa, is this man a Galilean? Great. Then in Luke 23:7, as soon as they knew that, he said, hey, send this guy to Herod. Send him over there. I'm getting rid of this baby. So that's what he did. So Jesus was taken before Herod Antipas. And this was a very mean guy. But consider, Jesus was awake. Go back in your mind now. The morning of the Passover. He went through that morning. Through the evening he had the Passover. At night, he was in the Garden of Gethsemane. He was taken prisoner. He was awake now all this time. And here it is in the morning now. In the morning. Can you imagine how groggy he is? Can you imagine how groggy? Not only that, but people were shouting at him all the time. Crucify him. Kill him. Right? He kept hearing this in his ears. He kept knowing what was coming too. You know. See, they spit on him. They punched him. And I mean punch. Watch some of the TV. You got one of these mobs, 5 or 6 of these punks attack somebody. Constant punching. Then one punch and you go down, you see. I'm not saying Jesus fell, but I'm just saying that's what happened. See, he's up all night long. By this time, he's exhausted, tied up, being hauled here or there, see. And remember, Jesus was not superhuman. He was flesh. He was flesh. And as I gave a long list one time, his physical attributes, and one was he slept. He slept. But here he had no sleep. So that helps you put a little picture on how Jesus felt. And we also see the mind of Pilate here and the mind of the crowd. So in Luke 23:7. Luke 23:7. See, when he was before Herod Antipas, he didn't conduct any kind of a real hearing. That was not a real hearing. The scripture tells us that he heard about Jesus before. You see, he was a very, very powerful and shrewd politician. So he had his spies out reporting back all the time. And he heard about Jesus and he wanted Jesus. He said, hey, this is great. A wonderful opportunity. I want to see Jesus perform some miracle. Okay? But in Luke 23:9, Jesus had no desire, obviously, to put up a defense, nor to perform any miracles to satisfy this guy's idle curiosity. So again, Jesus gave no response to Herod's accusations. Okay? None. Just stood there. Not going to waste my time. Luke 23, 14 and 15. Very interesting scripture. Very important. Luke 23, 14 and 15. However, there was something about Jesus' demeanor, his very presence before Herod. Didn't say a word. Didn't respond to him. That's kind of offensive. But nevertheless, there was something about Jesus that caused Herod to send a report back to Pontius Pilate. What was that report? That report was he found that Jesus did not commit any of the wrongdoings that he was accused of and was not worthy of death. Isn't that interesting? This pagan, carnal-minded king, willing to kill people, kill all kind of babies, remember, if they thought it was the Messiah. But anyway, that's what he found. Jesus to be innocent. See? That's interesting, from Pontius Pilate. So side point, we also know from scriptures that on about 3 occasions, if not more, during the hearing before Pilate, he made judicial findings, and what were they? That Jesus had done nothing worthy of death. The judicial findings. So now we got 2 people saying, this guy's innocent. Pagans, right? Carnal-minded people. That's what they said. So we have 2 astute politicians, even with Jesus, without Jesus offering a defense. Without it, they saw that there was a certain something about Jesus, you see, that gave him this frame of mind, that imputed this idea of innocence, okay? A certain something. Now, I feel that this certain something was God's Spirit in Jesus. God's Spirit in Jesus that just emitted or reflected an aura of honor, of dignity, of innocence. You see that? That recalls me back in the 50s when Mr. Armstrong was younger, and he was just full of vibrant energy. See, when he came in the room, there was no question who the boss was. There was no doubt. When he preached, you knew who was in charge, you see, when he spoke. So the same thing here. It was just God's Spirit that had these men, even though Jesus was not invoking a defense, to find him innocent. See? In Luke 23:11, Herod then said, okay, send Jesus back to Pilate. But during that time, those that were with Herod, they mocked him. They treated him with contempt at that time. He never ended here, treating with contempt and so on. So now, again, we're on the journey with Jesus. So now we walk back to Pontius Pilate's judgment seat, okay? We all go back there. Luke 23:2, and they began to accuse him again, saying, we found this fellow perverting the nation. A very broad charge, rather like a Russian charge, hooliganism or something, no meaning, okay? Forbidding to pay taxes to Caesar. Now we know that's a lie, because we know what that arise of when the fish had the coin, and he says what? Pay taxes to Caesar, or pay whatever dues Caesar to Caesar. Saying, yes, you pay your taxes. So we know that's a lie. And the third thing, saying he is Christ. He makes himself a king. Oh, makes himself a king. When that gets to Pilate's ears, okay, now that struck a note. That was something. Now when you say he's a king and he's proclaiming to be a king, okay, because now you brought him into conflict with Rome. Now you were having him take over Rome, throwing Rome out, etc., okay? And that charge could not be ignored. That one couldn't just be bypassed, okay? When they say he said he was a king, we have to look into that, Pilate thinks. So a side point, Pilate had a mentor in Rome. This is a side point now. We got to figure, we got to get into the mind of Pilate too, and we got the mind of Jesus and the mind of the mob. Pilate had a mentor in Rome called Sejanus. He was a very influential man, you see. And it's thought that he perhaps even got Pontius Pilate appointed to his position of governor. Okay? And he was viewed as a friend of Caesar. Now, a friend of Caesar was kind of a term. That meant there was a little circle of friends that they labeled cronies of Caesar, and they're very close to Caesar and so on. You see that? That's that term, and it'll crop up later too, see. So he was called a friend of Caesar. Now, however, Sejanus later fell out of favor with Caesar. Okay? Now that's dangerous in those days, and it was for him, because Sejanus was then executed. He was executed. See, now this event placed Pilate in a very precarious political position. He just carries over to this hearing. It all comes back to Pontius Pilate's mind, okay? It comes back to the hearing. He was in a precarious position now. Why? Remember the old statement, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. But there's a flip side to that. The friend of my enemy is my enemy. See? And Pontius Pilate was afraid that that may be Caesar's view, and that he would be viewed as an enemy of Caesar. You see, so all this was hanging over Pontius Pilate's head. Okay, further, what else? What else was going on in his mind? See, the rules of provincial administration required that the governor was to uphold the local religion and customs of the people. Now that was there. You see, so now he's deciding this case with these priests and this mob shouting, kill him, and he's thinking he's not guilty, you see. So it's another sword of Damocles hanging over his head. And on top of all that, previously, as was the custom of the Jews, if they felt something didn't go right, they sent a committee over to Rome to see Caesar. You see that? To see Caesar and to complain what was going on. Okay? So, and that happened one time. It happened one time that the committee went to complain about Pontius Pilate. So all these things are hanging over his head and going through his mind as the crowd is shouting, crucify him, and he's thinking in his heart, this guy's innocent. Even Herod thinks he's innocent, okay? So back to the hearing before Pilate. John 18:33. Then Pilate entered the praetorium, again called Jesus. You see, now this stuck in his head now. He heard he's a king. Whoa, Jesus, come in here. I want to talk to you now. I want to talk to you. Are you king of the Jews? You see how relevant that question is now? I heard he was a king. So now I'm asking Jesus, are you king of the Jews? King? Jesus? Answer me now. Is that what you are? See, Pilate wanted to make sure he didn't miss something, a subtle piece of evidence hidden about a potential rebellion, about Jesus being some kind of a leader of an inquisition, an insurrection. You see that? Now he had to get that clear. John 18:34. Jesus answered him, now, are you speaking for yourself, Pilate? Or did someone tell you this? Oh, kind of an odd response, but Jesus was asking now, did you get witnesses from your spies? Will you have evidence that I did these things? Or is it just hearsay from this mob? That's what he's asking. Which is it, Pilate? I don't know why he asked that, but he did. Okay? And Pilate answered, Am I a Jew? Am I a Jew? Eh? Your own nation. So Jesus, your own nation, and the chief priests have delivered you to me. Tell me, what have you done? See? He's kind of begging. What have you done? See? Now, a side point in Pontius' response, am I a Jew? He is really saying, look, I'm a Roman official appointed by Rome. I'm an important guy here. I'm above all this diddly squat about Jewish arguing back and forth every jot and tittle of Jewish law, or philosophers and so on, or, Greek philosophers, etc. I'm beyond that, see. That's what he says when I'm a Jew. That's what's kind of implied there, see. Then when Pilate said, your nation and chief priests have delivered to me, Pontius was really saying, no, I don't have any first-hand information. I just got hearsay from the mob. That's kind of what he's responding, you see. See, I just got it down the grapevine, see, about these accusations. So back to the hearing. John 18:34. 36, John 18:36. Jesus answered, my kingdom is not of this world. You want to know about me being a king? I'll tell you. My kingdom is not of this world. And here's one thing, a little side point on these. You see, Jesus is not invoking a defense. He is not thinking that if I say this to Pilate, he's going to turn me free. So why? Why the statements? They're for our benefit. Remember the scriptures, things were written before for our benefit? Well, these are some of the words that are written for us today. Jesus answered, my kingdom is not of this world. That's pretty powerful, very concise, not a lot of words. My kingdom is not of this world. My kingdom, if my kingdom were of this world, if now, my servants would fight. So when the kingdom was of this world, his servants did fight. You see, that's a little bit of selective service response hidden in there. So that I should not be delivered to the Jews. Now, see, Jesus didn't say I wouldn't be delivered. I'd fight against Rome, and it wouldn't be delivered to Rome. No, he said I wouldn't be delivered to the Jews. He was a little astute there in what he said. See, but now my kingdom is not from here. It's not of this world. Yes, I am a king, but it's not of this world. It's a heavenly thing, Pilate. It's a heavenly thing. See? Now, of course, Pilate thinks, hey, heavenly, I don't worry about the heavenly, you see. So side point, see, my kingdom is not of this world is the central scripture on the subject. So some religions believe that God's kingdom is here. God's kingdom. Now, as you go out and you're supposed to express about God's word, you can have this in mind. If it's brought up, it's not of this world. See, they believe that the kingdom is here. That's nonsense. This is Satan's world. This is Satan's world, not God's kingdom. God's kingdom is coming, and it will endure forever. See? So when he said, my servants would fight, see, this was a big selective service point back in World War II, because Jehovah's Witnesses believed that they could engage in spiritual warfare. So when they said that, the selective service said, oh, great. That means you cannot be conscientious objectors. So that wiped out a big, whole massive field of hearings and concerns, you see. So they took it up on appeal because the selective service law said you have to object to all wars if you're going to be a conscientious objector. You can't pick. You can't pick. Well, I objected to the Vietnam War. Okay, I don't object to the Gulf War or something like that. You're not allowed to do that. But they talked about a spiritual warfare, and the Supreme Court said, no, we're not interested in that. We're not going to get bogged down in diddly squat. If you can believe in spiritual warfare and still be a conscientious objector. Okay? So back to the hearing before Pilate, John 18:37. Pilate therefore said to him, "Are you a king then?" And Jesus' answer was what? See, before Caiaphas, he admitted, "I am the Son of God." And here again now, he's admitted. He says, "You say rightly that I am a king." Not mincing any words. "This cause I was born. For this cause I came into the world." This is part of the heart and core of my mission, you see, that I should bear witness to the truth. So when I speak the truth is spoken, I can bear witness to it by virtue of my position and my status and my miracles to substantiate the gospel that I'm preaching. It'll prove it, you see. So John 18:38, Pilate said, Jesus said, I should bear witness to the truth. So Pilate picked up on that in John 18:36. What is truth? See, I can see the disdain. What is truth? You can hear it in the words. You see what I mean? This is a waste of time. See, side point. From the little we know, in the side point of Pontius Pilate, there's not much we know of it. He was an educated man. He was acquainted with the pagan philosophers, okay? Also the Jewish, and he knew about the Jewish scribes continuously, debating God's law, or at least the law as they had it between the rabbis one way or the other, you see. He knew that. So he was kind of disdainful of this concept of trying to find truth. So I feel that the basic of Pilate's comment, what is truth? He's in effect saying, I'm not getting bogged down in the Jewish never-ending debate of what constitutes truth, nor of this political or philosophical aspects. I'm not going to get involved in that. Like, what is truth? Push it aside. I'm not interested. See? So back to the hearing. John 18:38. And when he had said this, he went out again to the Jews. And he said to them, I find, in other words, this is like a court, where the court hits the, he listens to your side, and he says, okay, I'm now going to make a decision. I find thus and such. That's it. Okay, clerk, close the hearings, going to get up and leave. And as attorneys, you take your papers, put them in a briefcase, and go home. See, and that's what usually happened with Pilate, okay? But not here. Not here. The power he had when people with respect and feared him. See, but not this mob, see? He says, I find no fault in him at all. None. Zip. Zero. Ice. He's innocent. Okay? That's what he found. Luke 23:15. Then Pilate cited backup authority. See, he's beginning to see this mob. They're resisting him. They're not packing up their briefcase and going home. So what does he do? He throws in Herod's decision. He said, now also, listen, it's just not my decision, but even Herod, he found him innocent. He found that he was worthy of nothing of death. See? Now that's what I'm telling you, crowd. Now pack up and go home. But they didn't, you see. They didn't. Mark 15:14, Matthew 27:23. He says, look, here's what I'm going to do. Like judges do today. They want to be like Solomon. They want to cut the baby in half, you see. He says, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to scourge him. I'll beat him. And it's going to hurt. And he'll be bloody. And I'll bring him out here. Then I'm going to release him. I'm going to take him free. Go, Jesus. Leave. Go home. That's what I'm going to do, crowd. And what happens? The people now, not just high priest, people kept crying out, crucify him, crucify him. You see, and Pilate felt this. He felt it. They were shouting in his face, not respecting, not going home, shouting in his face. They weren't going to give up. John 19:1. So Pilate took Jesus and did scourge him. Now a side point. The Romans had 3 different types of scourging. And I think this is important to kind of feel. There were some for small infractions, which was like a whipping. Just a whipping, saying, okay, this hurt, and don't do it again. Okay? The second type was a substantial scourging, like Paul had. Remember, 40 stripes less 1. Now this hurt, this drew blood. That was the second type. And the third type was the scourging prior to crucifixion. It was with a whip, and as we read, it had little bones in it, lead, and it really tore flesh. I won't elaborate and give some, comments on that, but it tore flesh. If you want to read some living examples, look into the history of the Jews in their concentration camps. And that's what some of the Nazis did to the Jews. They had this table, you could see it, they bent them over, and they did the whipping. And you'll see the effect of it. That'll help you know what the scourging was for crucifixion. So back to the hearing, John 19:2. And the soldiers twisted a crown of thorns, and they jammed it on Jesus' head. Did you ever get stuck with a thorn? I did. My wife got these rose bushes and so on. You try to push them aside, and boop, and it plunges in there, and the blood comes out. I mean, it goes deep. So just imagine now, a crown of thorn, and somebody jams it on his head. It draws blood. It draws blood. So now you can see Jesus with some blood on his face, okay? We don't want to get more graphic, but we can't deny it, okay? They put it on his head, put it on. They jammed it on. And they put on him a purple robe, a robe of royalty, of kingness. Oh, put this on there, and here's the blood dripping down, and this robe with his back too, maybe bleeding, and that's what he's got. And they said to him, "Oh, hail, King of the Jews!" And they struck him. Right? See, when you see soldiers like this, or even the mob, and they have the opportunity of a victim, they really go to it. It's joy. It's kind of fun, you see. There's no responsibility. They're free to do it. They're free to do it. So that's what they did. They struck him with their hands. John 19:4, Pilate then went out again and said to the people, "Behold, I'm bringing him out to you. And I'm telling you, I find no fault in this man." He kept saying it. You get Jesus, you get Pilate's mind in his heart. He's trying to get this man freed. And he can't do it, but he's trying, okay? I find no fault in him. John 19:5, then Jesus came out wearing the crown of thorns and the purple robe. Remember, exhausted, tired, blurry-eyed, standing there, and they have him dressed like a clown. Like a clown. And I think this was part of Pilate's trial strategy. If he looks foolish enough, they'll say, yeah, let him go. He's had enough, you see. But they didn't. They didn't. See? And he says, look here, behold the man. See? And you know, what does that mean, behold a man? Well, in classical literature there, it means this poor fellow, this poor creature, this poor wretch. There he is, beaten, bloody. See? I find no fault in him. Let him go. Let him go, you see. John 19:6. Therefore, when the chief priests and officers saw him, they didn't say, yeah, we have pity on him, let him go. Crucify him, crucify him. That was pounded to Pilate's mind and head, you see. And he said to them, You take him and crucify him. I don't find any fault in him. He keeps saying this. I'm making a judicial finding. No fault in him. And the Jews answered him, we have a law, and according to our law, because that's the laws of man, right? It's zip. I see these laws of men making all kind of rules and regulations, and they're just a lot of words, profundity of words. See, man, they may have power to make rules, but they're not really, they have authority to make rules, but they don't have the power of God to make them. See, it's a major difference, okay? So according to our law, he ought to die, for he made himself, now they're going to make another comment here, another accusation, he made himself the Son of God. Now, of course, that's error. He didn't make himself the Son of God. He was the begotten Son of God. But nevertheless, the Son of God. Now, that is another point that caused Pilate to stop and think. Okay? John 19:8. Therefore, when Pilate heard the words, he became more afraid. And the Greek there, very afraid. Very afraid. Isn't that something? See, because we have another issue here now that catches Pilate's mind. Pilate's mind. Side point. First, it was the political issue of Jesus being a king. That caused them concern. Now it was a religious issue about Jesus being a son of God. Right? Now an author brings out that Pilate was not religious, but he was superstitious. He was superstitious. Okay? His mind was subject to pagan religious beliefs. He knew about these things, and he believed them. See, he believed in divine men that had come to earth, offsprings of the gods, gods that had divine power to punish. Okay? That's what he believed. And this Jesus was maybe one of them. One that I scourged, a God that I scourged that believes in punishment. You see, that got him a little afraid. You remember in the background now, remember that note that his wife gave him? It said, I had a dream. Don't get involved with this innocent man. All these things we talked about, these swords of Damocles hanging on his head, all going through his mind, twirling as everything's going on here, see? So now he's a little concerned that maybe I scourged the God. I'm going to get punished by God. Not by Rome, by God. So back to the hearing. John 19:9. John 19:9. Once again, Pilate went into the praetorium. And he says to Jesus, now again, see, he goes back, Jesus, where are you from? You see how that ties in? Are you from heaven? Are you from heaven? Are you a God from heaven and come down here to earth? You see? That's what he's concerned about. Where are you from? But Jesus gave no answer. Didn't answer it. John 19:10. You can see the desperation then of Pilate. The desperation. Are you not speaking to me? Don't you know I have power to crucify you and power to release you? He's getting desperate. I'm trying to help you out here, Jesus, and you're not cooperating. See? John 19:11. Jesus answered him, look, again, there's not going to help with the trial, so I think it's written for us. You could have no power at all against me. None. Unless it had been given to you from above. Therefore, the one who delivered me to you has the greater sin. Has the greater sin. You may have sinned, Pilate, but they have a greater sin. I'll explain that scripture in another sermon. John 19:12. And then when Pilate sought to release him, again, I'm going to let him go, the Jews cried out saying, if you let this man go, you are not Caesar's friend. Remember the circle of friends to Caesar? You were not in that circle. That's our view, Pontius Pilate. And if you're not in the friend of circle, what are you? You're an enemy. You're an enemy of Caesar. You're an enemy of Rome. That's what they begin to threaten now. That's what they begin to threaten. Whoever makes himself a king, that was Jesus, speaks against Caesar. You got a case against Caesar, and you're going to let him go? You're going to release him to carry out his insurrection against Caesar? See, that's implied in all of this, you see. John 19:13. When Pilate therefore heard that saying, you get that? When Pilate heard that, when that reached his ears, that thought, that concept, see, he brought Jesus out and sat down in the judgment seat in a place that is called the pavement, but in Hebrew, Golgatha. John 19:14. Now it was the preparation day of the Passover, and about the 6th hour, and he said to the Jews, behold your king. In John 19:15, but they cried out, away with him, crucify him, crucify him. Pilate, stop all of this, crucify him. And Pilate said to them, shall I crucify your king? And then with the utmost of hypocrisy, they said, oh, we have no king but Caesar. Oh, they were so holy now. They were so politically righteous, you see, whereas really all the time they kept honoring the Maccabees and the Copa, whatever it was, all these rebels that fought against Rome. They honored them, and they had worship, big ceremonies honoring them. So this was total hypocrisy. We have no king but Caesar. Matthew 27:24. Then Pilate saw, and you get this now, he saw. He was a perceptive man. He was a lifelong politician. See? He saw that he could not prevail. He said, I cannot win this argument, this fight, this battle that's going on. I can't win it. There's no way. I'm losing it. I lost it. I cannot prevail at all. But rather, and in addition to that, a tumult was rising. A tumult. See, that was bad. You got to read the history of the Jewish people. Once they had problems, they had this proclivity to rise up and just cause a riot. They had to send in Roman troops, slaughtered thousands, all because of a riot. But you see, this is not what Rome wanted. Roma Pax, they wanted the peace. And if you couldn't keep the peace, you're out, you see. So Pontius Pilate took water. As he saw this tumult beginning to rise now, the crowd now is beginning to shout more, probably gathering, getting larger. See, took water and he washed his hands before the multitude, saying, I am innocent of the blood of this just person. Even his words at that time proclaimed innocence of Jesus, you see. He saw it. So he really should have let Jesus go if he was a good judge, but he was weak. He was more concerned about his political career, about his political life, his human life maybe even. It would be executed if there was a big insurrection took place. So, side point, Pilate, an astute politician, was perceptive. He could see that the agitators that were in the crowd, and some were kind of professional ones, just planted to shout and scream out, crucify him at the right times. They were beginning to get their way. The mob was beginning to become restless. He could picture them charging down the street, burning, maybe rebellion, attacking the troops, fighting with the troops, trying to turn it into a complete insurrection where they overthrew Rome. He could picture that in his mind, you see, that everything would go south, really south. This would necessitate the calling out of the troops, and they were always on standby. Because it was during the holy days when all the Jews got together that their nationalism surfaced to the surface, and they had rebellions and battles and so on. So they had troops on standby ready to go in, and they didn't hesitate using their swords when they did. You see, this would cause countless deaths, and for a certainty, a committee of Jews going to Caesar in Rome with a complaint that he was a bad leader, that he couldn't keep the peace. See? And that's the thought now we're going to leave that was going on through Pontius Pilate's mind. And we'll pick it up there next time.